Have you ever been judged in the first 5 seconds before you even opened your mouth, like someone had already decided your worth and filed it away? That kind of moment sticks with you. This story isn't something I read online or heard from a friend. It's something I lived through, something that happened at cruising altitude, trapped inside a metal tube full of strangers where one man thought he could shrink me into nothing, and learned very publicly how wrong he was. It started like any other flight. Early morning, half-awake airport energy, that weird mix of burnt coffee and impatience. I boarded wearing what I always wear when I want to disappear. A loose hoodie, worn sneakers, hair pulled back, no makeup, no effort to look impressive. I wasn't trying to make a statement. I just wanted to sit down, put my headphones on, and finish reviewing some notes I'd been obsessing over for weeks. My seat was 2A, first-class window. I settled in, exhaled, opened my tablet, and for a few peaceful minutes, everything was fine. Then he showed up. You could hear him before you saw him. Loud voice, confident in that way only people who've never been told no can be. He was mid-call, barking instructions, dropping names like they were credentials, his laughter sharp and dismissive. He stopped in the aisle when he saw me, and I felt it before I looked up. That pause, that silence that isn't empty but loaded. When I glanced up, his face twisted just slightly. Not shock, disapproval, like he'd found gum stuck to his shoe. He cleared his throat. Loud. I ignored it. Cleared it again, closer this time. Finally, he tapped the edge of my seat. Not gentle, not friendly. I slid my headphones down and said, "Yeah, polite?" Neutral, already bracing myself. He didn't say hello, didn't ask a question. Just said, "You're in the wrong seat." I checked the number, then looked back at him. "No, I'm not. That should have been the end of it." Instead, he laughed. That slow, smug laugh people use when they think reality owes them an apology. He leaned in and said something about people sneaking up from economy, about how first class wasn't a playground, about how I should head back before someone noticed. His eyes flicked over my clothes, my skin, my face, cataloging everything he thought didn't belong. I told him I was assigned the seat. He asked how much it cost, like money itself was the gatekeeper of dignity. When I didn't play his game, his tone shifted. Sharper, meaner. He muttered about standards, about how things weren't what they used to be, about how people were getting things they hadn't earned. He said it casually, like it was common sense, like I was supposed to nod along and accept my place. Inside, I felt that familiar heat. That mix of anger and exhaustion you get when you realize this isn't about a seat or a flight or a misunderstanding. This is about power. About someone needing to feel bigger by making you feel smaller. I stayed quiet longer than he expected. Not because I was scared, but because I wanted to see how far he'd go when no one stopped him. He went far. He complained to the flight attendant, demanded she check my ticket, accused me of lying, of stealing, of being some kind of charity case. Every word landed heavier than the last. People nearby pretended not to hear, eyes fixed on magazine screens, anything but the tension unfolding 2 feet away. The flight attendant tried to diffuse it, bless her, but he wasn't interested in calm. He wanted victory. At one point, he leaned closer and said, "People like you don't understand how this world works. People like you." He didn't need to explain. I'd heard that sentence my whole life in classrooms, boardrooms, hallways where I was the only one who looked like me. That's when something in me shifted. Not rage. Clarity. When he told me I should be grateful just to be there, that I should know when to keep my head down, I stood up. Slowly, calmly. Like someone who wasn't asking permission anymore. He laughed loud enough for half the cabin to hear. Made a joke about me going to complain to the pilot. I said, "Actually, yeah. I am." That really set him off. He said I'd get escorted off. Said he'd seen it happen. Said people like me always overplayed their hand. What he didn't know was that I wasn't reacting emotionally. I was making a decision. At the front of the cabin, I asked to speak to the captain. Not demanded. Asked. Quietly. With intention. The energy shifted almost immediately. The cockpit door opened. The captain stepped out, and instead of annoyance, I saw recognition. Respect. He asked if everything was okay. Before I could answer, the man stormed up behind me, launching into a speech about fraud, disruption, threats to the environment he paid for. The captain listened. Then he turned to me and asked a question, a technical one, about weight distribution, about a note in the flight log from the previous leg. I answered without thinking, because this was my language, my world. The man scoffed, said I was faking it, reading buzzwords off the internet. The captain didn't laugh. He asked a follow-up. I answered that too. That's when the man's confidence cracked. Just a hairline fracture at first, enough to let doubt seep in. He demanded credentials, proof, authority. I reached into my bag and handed over my badge. Not flashy, not dramatic, just undeniable. The captain nodded once, turned to the man and said, "Sir, she's authorized." The silence that followed was thick, heavy, the kind that makes people uncomfortable because it forces them to confront something they don't like. The man tried to recover, stammered something about connections, about knowing executives, about lawsuits. I told him calmly that the company leasing the aircraft belonged to my family, that the decisions he was threatening to escalate came across my desk. His face drained of color. I could have stopped there. I could have let him sit down, swallow his pride, pretend it never happened. But then he said, "You should have said something sooner." Like this was my fault. Like I owed him protection from his own behavior. That's when I told the captain I didn't feel safe flying with him, that his aggression, his instability, his fixation on me made me uncomfortable. The captain didn't hesitate. He made the call. We diverted. People clapped. Not all of them, but enough. Enough to make it clear this wasn't just my story anymore. Security met the plane. The man argued, pleaded, tried to rebrand himself as misunderstood. It didn't work. He was escorted off shouting about lawsuits and ruined meetings while someone nearby filmed the whole thing. Later, I found out how far the fallout went. The video went viral. His company panicked. Partners pulled out. Deals collapsed. A few days later, I heard he'd been removed from his position, fired. Not because of me, but because the world finally saw him the way people like me always had. I don't tell this story because I enjoy watching someone fall. I tell it because there's a lesson buried in the discomfort of it. You never really know who someone is. You never know what power they hold, what battles they've fought, what rooms they've already earned their way into. And more importantly, you don't get to decide someone's worth based on how comfortable they make you feel. So let me ask you this. If you'd been in my seat, would you have spoken up sooner? Would you have shut it down immediately? Or would you have done what I did and let the truth arrive on its own, louder than any argument? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear where you land on this because these moments aren't rare. They're everywhere. And how we handle them says a lot about who we are.